Good afternoon and welcome to today's Evolution webinar on SMS, our text messaging service. So welcome to everyone that has come along. I noticed a few names from yesterday, so you certainly are gluttons for punishment. So this SMS webinar is in regard to Evolution. And if you are planning to move to Evolution and you're not on Evolution yet, then it's a good webinar to watch. And if you are using Evolution, you've probably already got your SMS set up. But for those of you who might not, then we'll go through from the start, from how to set it up, and look at all the different configurations that are necessary when using the SMS service to its fullest use. So my name's Caroline Birkinshaw. I'm one of the training staff here at Medtech, and you might notice a couple of little differences in the version of Evolution that I'm using. I'm going to be testing version 4, and that's coming out in a few weeks' time. So if you notice any little differences, they will come along when you upgrade to this version shortly. So first of all, we're going to go into the setup of SMS. And to do that, you would click on File. I've got a new little button here, which I would click on instead, and go to Options. So this is the same as before. And we have SMS set up down here in the options menu. It's very similar. So if you're used to using the Medtech 32 SMS, it's very similar, but you may have moved over from Vensa, so it would look quite different. So first things first, and you would need to have a contract for our SMS service. So the first place to start, if you haven't applied for this, would be to go to sales@medtechglobal.com. So sales@medtechglobal.com. They will send you the paperwork, and once you've signed your contract and all that side of things has been done, you will be sent your practice ID, username and password. These need to be entered in onto the server, and so you would pass them on to your IT service provider if you have one, or your cloud team. If you have an in-house server, you can load this information on yourself. Also, our support team are always willing to help you out with this as well. So first thing is once these details are loaded in, is to activate Manage My Health SMS for this practice. You do not need to, so don't worry about the wording, Manage My Health. You do not have to pay extra to join the Manage My Health patient portal if you're not already using it. So this sits outside the patient portal, which is a charged service. So there's nothing else to pay other than paying for your text messages. So select Activate Manage My Health SMS. And the first little box here is to indicate when you do not want SMS messages to be sent. So I've got them not sending from 13:16, which might be 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But you could set this up to say 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. so that you're not sending text messages out to people throughout the night, which they might get upset about. The next thing to set up is whether or not you would like automatic appointment reminders. So that's only one feature of the SMS, so you have a choice whether you want to activate this or not. So if you do, put a tick in here, and then you can choose whether or not you want one message to go out or whether you would like 2 messages to go out. So we could say, for instance, this message would go out 1 day before, or it might be that you would send another message 1 hour or say 2 hours before the appointment's due. If you have a plan, an SMS plan, and it has a capped amount of SMS messages that you can send in a given period, then you might not want to send 2 because that's going to cost twice as much as sending 1 message. So decide which is your preferred option and put a tick in whichever one you like, and set the time or the days that you would like that message to go out. You can select not to send an appointment reminder for appointments booked in an unavailable slot. So these are kind of usually emergency appointments where you've actually made it unavailable, but you're going to squeeze somebody in. And you can tick do not send appointment reminders for appointments booked on the same day. If you leave that blank, then they will go out on the same day, as long as they fall within the time frame that you've selected. So obviously, because I've selected 1 appointment reminder 1 day before, patients who make an appointment on the same day will automatically not get a text message. But if I send up a second message 2 hours earlier, then so long as they fall within that 2-hour period and I haven't ticked this, then they will get a text message to remind them of their appointment. Then we need to decide which of these features within Medtech Evolution you would also like to apply the SMSs to. So you can choose which ones you would like out of those. And if people will send reminders, I think one of the questions yesterday was, can we stop people from sending reminders? And unfortunately, no, we can't. That's outside our scope. So it's managed by your IT service provider. So patients can send replies, and we have a box which we'll go through shortly of where to see those replies if there are any replies. If you don't want to monitor the inbox, the SMS inbox, then you could send all replies to a certain person's email address, and they can pick them up from there instead. So if you do, then flag that as an option, and then put the email address you would like any SMS replies coming into your practice to be sent to. The next step is to set up the staff. So each staff member can be given access to sending messages or not. So looking down here, I have Jack, who is one of our GPs, and he's going to have automatic appointment book reminders, and he's going to be able to send text messages from the palette, and he's a very good query builder, so he can send SMSs from there. And when we go to the nurse, then we're going to allow the nurse to send recall SMSs. Now, because I've flagged Jack as getting automatic reminders, I have to set up the message that I'm going to send out to those patients. So that's done in Outbox document, which we'll be covering in a minute. But I have got one I already prepared earlier, and it's called SMS Appointment Reminder. And so from my list of SMS templates that I've already created, I will select the one that I want for this provider. So unlike Medtech 32, where you can only have one specific text template, in here you can have a different template for individual staff members. And once I've done that, then I can go OK. And this is because I haven't entered my credentials. So I'm just going to ignore that for now because I don't want my text messages to go anywhere. So this will make sure that they don't. So I'm going to just cancel that. Okay, so the next area to go in is, before we go to the next step, I just want to talk about the fact that sometimes your text messages will not send out, and you may have come across this issue from time to time when they simply stop going. The most common reason for this to happen is your Medtech services need to be rebooted. Now, the Medtech services sit on the server. So if you're on a cloud server, you won't be able to do this yourself. You will need to notify your cloud team to do this for you. If you have a server, down in your search tray at the bottom of your Windows tray, just type in services. And up will come services here. And this gives you a long list. It looks a bit daunting, but don't worry. Just come down. They're in alphabetical order, so just come down to where it says Medtech Services. This one here. There's only the one of them. Double click on it to open it up, and you can either start it, stop it, start it, or stop it. So mine's not started, which is why I haven't got a restart. So you should then have a restart option like I have now, so you can restart the service. And just by clicking on that button will usually get your text messages going again. So if you're able to do it, or you're able to ask your cloud team to do it for you, or your internet or your IT service provider, before you ring the customer service team, because 9 times out of 10, that's what they're going to ask you to do. So it just saves you some time. So do this first, and then if your text messages do not start up again, then please contact us, our customer service team. So we'll just come out of there. Right, so the next step we're going to look at is the patient register, because there's some SMS configurations that are important on the F3 screen. So we'll start there. So I have a patient on my pallet. We go to F3. And the first thing that's important is obviously that they need to have a cell phone number. So on your mobile phone number field here, ensure that there is a valid cell phone number. So when you type the cell phone number in, you can click on the little query button at the end here, question mark, and it will tell you whether the cell phone number is valid or not. If there's been a typo or the patient may have made a mistake, if I've changed this and try again, it's going to tell me that the cell phone number is not valid, because there's no such numbers in New Zealand that start with 023. And it will be in red, so you'll know instantly that this is not a validated phone number. And now it is. And the other thing in the patient register to take note of is whether or not the patients want to have a text message sent to them in the first place. So whilst you may have loaded in their cell phone number, they may have indicated that they don't want text messages to be sent from the practice, in which case you would tick this box here. These 3 boxes are no SMS, no emails, and no letters. So letters being recall letters and invoices and statements. So yeah, we'll take that. So just ensure those are set up. And then the next area we're going to go to is in the appointment, the automatic template for the, sorry, stumbling over my words here. We're going to go to the appointment templates so that we can make sure that, okay, I clicked on that too hard and it closed. Come back in. I have to get used to that new little button. Okay, and options and appointment template. Put in a, I didn't check before we started if any of my staff have appointment templates, and they don't, It doesn't really matter, because what I want to show you in here is that you can also create an appointment template. You can have different templates throughout your day. So different messages for the morning, different messages for the afternoon. Now, if you set this up, so if I put in this reminder here, on my next line of appointments, so in the afternoon, I could have created a different template for the afternoon messages. So this is an option. You don't have to do this. If you've set the appointment template like we did in the setup, then Medtech will look at, or Evolution will look in here first. If these are empty, there's no template in here, then it will pick up the template from the setup. If there are templates in here, then those are the templates that will go out, not the one from the setup. You may not set individual templates up for certain periods of time during the day for everyone. So as long as you have one in the setup, then that will be the message that everyone gets. So this is an option. It's not compulsory. So if you set the template in the startup or setup menu, then you do not have to put one in here. But if you choose to send out different messages throughout the day, then this is where you would create you'd create your template and attach them in here. Okay. Cancel that. On the appointment book itself, which I obviously don't have, I will have to set up a template. Apologize for this. This is a brand new database that I got about 10 minutes before the webinar started. And I knew there'd be some things that were missing. I'll just quickly set up a template for today for our general practitioner. So if you're not too familiar with setting up templates, then you will see one quickly being done. Let me choose this fortunately, this webinar the duration of it isn't too long, and I'm just going to give this guy appointments all the way through to 5 p.m. without a break. That was a very quick template. Okay, so I'll just close that and reopen it. Okay. So if you have the SMS column in here, so these templates do not have the SMS column, you can create the SMS column in here or apply the SMS column in here, and then that will alert you to whether or not there are the replies. It's very useful to see whether the template, whether the SMS message that you sent out has had a template applied, has had a reply applied to it. Just put Mr. Smith back in. Okay, so to add in the SMS column into the appointment book, you need to go to File, Options, Staff, Members, find the GP that you want to have the or find the provider that would like to have that column, and go to the Access tab and display SMS in here. And then you'll get an extra column. And of course, I have to come out of Evolution for that change to take effect. open that appointment template up. Okay, I'll put Arnie up on the palette. So, GP. It hasn't applied. Apologise for that. The SMS column is not in here. Did I? Okay. So you will get it does work, and you will get an SMS column in your appointment book. And as any replies come in, it will show in green that there is a reply to the text message that you sent. If the column has a yellow block beside it, then the patient has received their text message. And also, by opening up the appointment, you can see here whether or not the text message has been sent. So these aren't ticked because I didn't send them. And I can also open up the ellipsis and see the message that I sent. But because I haven't sent any messages, it isn't going to open up for me. But here I can see the message that was sent, and the tick box indicates that it has been. So if you don't have this column created in your appointment book, not everybody chooses to put it in because it takes up space. So by opening the appointment up, you can see it. But if you want more visibility, then put the SMS column into the appointment book through the staff setup, and you will be able to see exactly which patients have had text messages sent to them and whether or not there are any replies that have come in from them. So next, we'll just have a quick look at the patient palette text messages. So this is where you would create a random or a one-off text message to somebody. So you'd have the patient on the palette, and when you click on the little telephone up there, it will open the palette SMS communication box. So from here, I can choose to send a template that I've already created, and that will populate with the message that I'm going to send. Now, as you can see on the sidebar here, in this message, there are 313 characters. This is because what has happened here is a simple Outbox document has been changed to a text message. Now, when you do that, it will tell you that this message is going to go out as 2 text messages, because there is a limit of about 160 characters that you can apply to a single text message. Those are constraints that are put on us, not ones that we've chosen. So you do need to limit your templates to under 160 characters. But it will tell you if it's going to go out as 2 text messages. And then by sending 2 text messages often annoy the patients to start with, and they will cost twice as much. You're using your allocation of text messages up a lot faster than you would need to. So just bear that in mind. You don't have to use a template. You can simply type your message in to Arnie and just put the message in that you would like to send him. Down here, this is the date and the time that the message is going to go out. You can change these. You can change the date and you can change the time. If you want the message to go later or the next day, then you can manage that here. There's a button here called Related Family Members. And what this is very useful for is if you want to send a text message in relating to a child. So the text messages that you send will always be logged into the daily record, so the clinician can see the messages that have gone out to patients. But in the case of a child, you would want that message to log into the child's daily record, but you would not necessarily want the child themselves to receive the text message, whether or not they have a cell phone. So by opening up the child on the palette and and composing the message to the child, you can then click on related family members. And if there are related family members, then you could select one of those to receive the text instead of the child themselves. But when you save it, then the message will go into the child's daily record. These features down here allow you to set up a task reminder. So if you're sending a message to a patient who you've asked them to do something, if you wanted to follow that up in next week, then you could set yourself a task reminder to follow this up, and it would be for me. So I'd select myself and off it would go. So there's various different things you can do in the compose text message. So I've been talking about the setting up templates. So let's go and have a look about how to set up templates next. So again, we're going to go into File, Options, and in Outbox Document. So setting up text messages is exactly the same as setting up an Outbox document, with a slight difference. So if I come into a new document, I'm going to give my text messages a code. So I might want to start all my text messages off with a prefix that indicates that these are text messages. Or I could call them SMS, and I'm going to call this one a test. SMS test. It's going to go into the document folder, and this is the field that's really important. This, because it says text, T-E-X-T, that indicates that it's actually a document. It's a text document as opposed to a Word document. So by dropping down the drop-down list, you will see that we have SMS as a format. And so when you're creating SMS templates, you must change the format to be an SMS format. And then come into the document body, and the rest is very similar, or it's exactly the same as setting up an Outbox document. So they tend to be less formal, so you possibly wouldn't start off with Dear Mrs. Joan Blogs, because A, that's taking up a lot of characters, and also text messages tend to be less formal. So if I go into the patient keywords and choose first name, most text messages, people are happy to use their first name. So hi, and then you can type the message that you want. So if it was an appointment reminder, you might say, reminder of your appointment on, and then you can put the insert field in for your appointment. And it's in here. It's down at the bottom under P for patient. Right down the bottom. And this one, patient appointment date and time. And you can put things like please do not reply. Phone, I put phone. And then your phone number, and it will encourage people not to send text replies, but to phone the practice if they have a question about the message they've received. And go OK, and we're not going to do that again. So now I've set up another template. So there's various other places where you would apply a template to. One of these would be your recalls. So in the patient recalls, we bring up a recall contact list. Okay, I knew that was going to happen. So this is my brand new database, so I'm not sure what's in it and what I have available. So we'll just go forward a couple of years and see what I can pick up. Oh, I've got one recall in the next in the next 5 years. Right, so on your recall contact list, when you bring it up, you are able to send text messages, so send SMS. But they will not go unless there is an associated SMS message to send, because Medtech is not going to decide for you what the message is that it's going to send out. So you have to decide that first and set it up. So we can set up SMS messages against any screening term, any vaccine, and any vaccine group. And to do that, create your templates first, as we've just done in the Outbox, and then go into File, Options, Recall Screening, Screening Terms. What's this one? This is a 4 to 5 year old preschool. But anyway, I'm going to choose a smear. So any of these screening terms that you have can be set up this way. And here you have an SMS document field, same as you had a recall letter field for your, in this case, smears. So by opening this up, I can choose the SMS message that I've pre-created in the Outbox document, in Outbox fields. So once I've done that, any smears that come up on my recall contact list will now have this message attached to them, and I can click on that send SMS, and as long as there's a mobile phone number available, that patient will get that text message through the recall system. To do vaccine, I can come into vaccine, find the vaccine that you are wanting to put the message against. So let's go for probably doesn't really matter. Going to do, let's say, Zostrix 65. And again, we've got the SMS document field here, and I can apply the template that I created. Okay. And finally, the vaccine group. So again, I can open up a vaccine group. And add in the SMS document here as well. Okay. So once they're set and you've exited Medtech and Evolution and come back in again, then in this column here, all those types of recalls that you've applied the recall template to will be listed in here, and you'll see them. And then you can select send SMSs, and it will send an SMS for every patient that's in your recall list that has a valid mobile phone number. One thing I didn't mention in the patient register is that in order to send text messages, you cannot have spaces in your mobile phone numbers. So you will need to start eliminating those if your reception staff are putting in 021 space and then the number. You will need to start taking those out, because otherwise they won't go. So sorry if that's a bit of a pain, but I think that message is getting around to most of the practices now that you do have to load them in without spaces. Right. So the next option that we're going to look at is also the statement workflow, because we can also do the same thing here. We can create a template, an SMS template, and then send text messages out to that group of patients as well. So if we go into the account statement workflow, I'll just open up one that was created earlier. And again, we need to have an SMS template attached to enable us to be able to send out text messages to the patient. And this is done via the account group. So each account group will get can be sent a text message. So I've got account group, I've got 2 account groups in here. I've got one for patient and one for casual patients. So coming into the setup again, and options, and come into accounting and account group. And in my patient account group, I have an SMS template here. So I've already created a statement workflow template, and I will apply that to my account group. And I've also got casual patients. And so I can either send a different type of message if I've set up a different type of template, or I can apply the same one. And then when I create my next statement workflow, I will be able to send all my patients who have a mobile phone number. Again, it has to be validated and without spaces. And by clicking on this option here, I'll be able to send all of those patients a text message with their balance. So again, it depends on how you set it up. So your text message, I've done a very quick one. Let me have a quick look at the one I created. You can probably make it a lot nicer. It was a bit blunt. So what did I call it? SMS Statement Workflow. So in here, I picked up the payor balance. So look in the payer insert fields. So instead of the patient keywords, look at the payer keywords, and in here you'll have the account balance for the payer. And so, hi, please see attached your account balance for this month, included my bank details, and please pay by the 20th of the month and do not reply. So that's a sort of fairly standard, very basic. You can come up with something more pleasant, I'm sure. Okay. So the next, we covered this in the last week's query build setup, but you may not have been at that meeting. So I'm just going to go through how to create a query builder SMS. So come into your query builder, and to create an SMS message to go out, you need to have the patient's cell phone number. So I'm going to select my group of people as being just patients. You can use enrolled patients, or you could use registered patients. And then, oh, what happened there? I hate it when things disappear. What happened? Patient is one, and patient's phone number. Cell phone, and I'm going to put in here, patient's cell phone is not blank, because we don't want to include patients in our query that have a blank cell phone number. And then I can continue to create my query as to what whatever it is that I want to, whatever group of patients I want to select. So it might be people who haven't got a recall for something, patients who have a classification for something. So just use your general knowledge of the query builder to bring up the group of people that you want to select. And the other one that's very handy to have in here is no SMS. So this option here, because then you're not going to include patients who have ticked that they do not wish to have a text message sent to them. So no SMS is not ticked, and that will ensure that your query doesn't go out to patients who don't want to receive text messages. In the bottom box, the two important fields that must be included in here are the patient's cell phone number and the patient's ID for merge. This will allow the SMS query to be run, and so we have ID for merge here. If you'd like to have more detail around building queries, then please look at or go and watch on Insight the query builder sessions that we ran last week. So there's one for Medtech 32 and one for Evolution. And that will give you a more, we won't cover query building today, just the SMS queries. So then you can run the SMS query. So this isn't the run query, which you normally would run. You need to run the box underneath, which is called run SMS query. And from here, you can see that I've got some invalid numbers. So those are not going to be going anywhere. And I can select SMS and compose my message. And again, you can select a template if you have a template set up, or you can type a one-off message in straight into and again, it's going to tell you how many characters you've got and how many messages are going to be sent out. And you can go OK, and off they'll go. And that's all there is to it. It's quite straightforward. So that has pretty much concluded what I was going to cover in today's SMS webinar. If you have any questions, can you, because you're all on mute, because we can't really have everybody chatting at once, can you type your questions if you have any? We've got some time left. We finished a little bit earlier than anticipated. So if you would like to type your questions into the question box, then we can look at answering them. And I will have Chrissy I think Chrissy's online, who can help me answer some of these if they get a bit too technical. So the send now button, a send now button would be good. Right, Wendy, that's a good idea. Rather than just the general OK button. Is that what you're indicating? If not, just type it in a little bit more exactly what you want, and we can pop that through as a software improvement suggestion. You can, or you can do that through Insight if you would like to. Otherwise, I can get that sent in as a just put a little bit more explanation of exactly why you would think an send button will be good and where you would like it. So the next question from Leona: when composing a new SMS, is there a set time frame of 2 to 5 minutes before the actual text goes, and how do we turn this off or change it? So on your palette, so in the home ribbon, you can, and I've just remembered something I forgot to tell you, so I'll cover that as well in a second. When you're composing an email, a text message, sorry, it tells you here the day and the time that it's going to go, which is always 5 minutes. So as soon as you open this box up, it's always at least 5 minutes ahead. But you can change this to a longer period of time whenever you want, whenever you wish to. So that's how you would change the time that your text message actually goes out. So Helen, we covered this in the statement, so thank you. I think you may have just preempted me a little bit on that feature. So did I answer any questions that you have about sending out the SMSs for the monthly statements? If not, just add a bit more to your question and we'll have another look at it. If we can send an appointment reminder, so if we send an appointment reminder, it automatically cancels, is one of the checks to ensure there are no spaces in the cell phone. Yes, it needs to be validated. So if there's spaces, it won't be valid. So yeah, so make sure that there are no spaces. The text message won't go if there are spaces. Absolutely. I think that's all the questions that we've got so far. So we're a little bit ahead of time. Now, something I omitted to say, so before any of you leave, I'll just cover it because one of them is quite important. So up on the patient home ribbon, where you've got your compose SMS, you've got 3 boxes here: SMS inbox, SMS outbox, and SMS rejected. So if we start with the outbox first, so when you send a text message, or like my ones from the query builder, I've been sending these out, but they're not going. So these are sitting here waiting to be sent. So these are the 2 that I've done today. And so, oh no, sorry, that was a while ago. So they're still waiting to be sent. So you've got different status options in here: to be sent, expired, rejected, cancelled. So you can spot here, and in order to filter for the patient, for all patients instead of just the patient that's on the pallet, you need to go into your filter and take the patient name out and go OK, and then that will filter your outbox for all messages that are in here. And you can delete them. If you right click, you can select all and then right click and cancel. I think that cancel them all. So you can't delete, I beg your pardon, but you can cancel all your messages if you've done them by mistake. So as you say, once they go in here and you might have done a query and you wished you hadn't, you can quickly come in here. You've got about 5 minutes before they actually start going out. The inbox is the one that again is quite important. So if you filter here and take out the single patient, SMS inbox from maybe last month. I thought that was going to happen to today. Okay, so I don't have any. It's obviously not because I haven't sent any. So, but if you get replies, this is where they're going to go. So take the patient name out using the filter and you'll see any replies that have come in. So this is something that does need to be monitored. Most people who reply will reply with a okay or thank you or some such, but you may get replies requesting that an appointment is cancelled. You may, from time to time, it has happened, we've seen it happening, somebody will use the reply option from an appointment book message, automatic message, to send a text message to the practice about something that's very important and needs to be attended to. So it is a good idea. It's rare, but it does happen. And we cannot prevent it from happening. So it's a great idea to come in here, get somebody, maybe it's just a job that's given to someone, to monitor this couple of times a day, just to double check that there are no messages in here that need urgent attention. The other option, like we spoke about right at the very beginning, is instead of doing that, you can, in the SMS setup, you can forward any replies by ticking this to a single address, email address, and then one person is in charge of monitoring any replies that come in. So you've got both options, but it is important that somebody does monitor replies. And the last one is the rejected. So if the patient says they never received an SMS, the most likely scenario is that the phone number that they had in their F3 screen has changed, and they now have, it might be a valid number, but when you try to send it out to the patient, it's no longer in use, that cell phone. They've applied for another one. So that's usually one of the most common ones, or it could be a technical reason that they haven't gone out. So again, it should be monitored from time to time to make sure, and you'll have a status in here telling you why the message was rejected. Okay, so I'll just have a look and see if there are any more questions. Doesn't look like it. So I'll leave it open for a few more minutes. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending. And if you have any questions that you might think of later and think, oh, I wished I'd asked that, please pop an email to me. You can send it to trainingnz@medtechglobal.com. So trainingnz@medtechglobal.com, and any messages, any emails relating to the webinars will get forwarded to me directly, so I'll respond to them. And thank you very much for coming, and we'll look forward. I think the next week's webinars are on setup, so looking at some of the setup options, the more important ones. We won't have time to do every setup option, but we'll start with some of them, and perhaps have another webinar at a later date to look at some of the other setup options in both Medtech 32 and Evolution. I look forward to that one next week. Thank you.